Welcome to Cold Case MHS, Monsters and Demons, where real education meets real life. I'm your host, Randy Hubbard.
And I'm your co-host, Lydia Lisco, and we thank you for listening.
Photographs faded, memories grown old, a story entangled, a crime so unfaithful, yet left untold. I'm puzzling.
Welcome back to Cold Case MHS. We have another case to discuss today of Jillian Miles, a young woman who, again, got involved in a high-risk lifestyle. But what happened to her does not define who she is. So I'm going to allow the students to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about her case, and then we'll talk more about Jillian as we go along.
Hi, my name is Clara. I'm a senior at William Mason High School.
My name is Avery. I'm a senior as well.
My name is Cassie, and I'm also a senior.
So tell us a little bit about Jillian's case.
So around 9 p.m. on February 19th, 2013, the police had received a call from the neighbors regarding running water and screaming at the house. They heard gunshots from the duplex on 160 West Parkwood Avenue. Jillian was upstairs taking a bath or a shower, presumably, when she went downstairs for unknown reasons, and that is where she met her fate. She was shot at the bottom of her stairs. Her two kids were in the living room along with their dog, and the person was presumed to lock all of the doors in the house, so when the police had arrived, all of the doors were locked, but they were seen by one of the neighbors leaving the side door of the house, running away.
When you said she was shot at the bottom of the stairs, explain a little bit about what you learned about the entry wounds and things like that.
She had 2 shots, one to her upper chest, neck area, and one to her abdomen. We were able to figure out which one came first and which one was second based on the way her body was positioned and the range of the shot based on the stipling. Jillian was found with 2 gunshot wounds, one to her upper chest, neck area, and a second one to her abdomen. We were able to figure out which one came first and which one came second based on the range of the shot and the position her body was in.
It would have been a gunshot wound of her abdomen. It was in the right lower quadrant of her abdomen. We figured out that was first because the shooter would have had to have been farther because there was no stippling. So they would have had to have been at like an intermediate to distant range, as stippling only travels about 2.5 to 3 feet. And then the second shot, which was the gunshot wound to like around her neck area, was stippling. So the person would have had to have been closer. So we believe that from the first shot, she was leaning over in pain from the first shot of her abdomen. And then that put her in closer range to the shooter, which is why the stippling showed.
First thing, for those out there listening that don't understand what stippling is, what is that?
Stippling is the gunpowder like around the wound from the shot. So like the gunpowder comes off when you shoot someone, and so the closer you are, the more stippling there is.
Lifestyle, unfortunately, put her in connection with a lot of not so good people. So explain a little bit about her lifestyle, those people that were around her, and maybe a little bit about who you think possibly could have done this.
So there was 3 people that we noticed Jillian had connections with that were not so great for her lifestyle. The first one was the father of her children. He was involved in drugs, and he had a history of abuse, especially with her and other women as well. Second one was her drug dealer, and he was known in the area to be pretty big when it came to that stuff. The third one was a friend, that's what she called him. His friend was known to own guns and also had some connections with drugs.
I'd like to add on to what Avery said about the second person. We are not completely sure if he was exactly her drug dealer, but it is strongly believed that he was.
Real quick though, what would be the motive for some of these people that were in her life to be upset enough with her to kill her?
So one possible motive that we came across was from her said drug dealer. It was said that she was picking drugs that she was given to sell, and so we believe that people got upset and went back to her drug dealer, and that's why it was like an all or nothing kind of thing, and they came over and shot her. That could have been a possible reason.
Okay. And one thing about people in that lifestyle, the selling of the drugs and things like that, is that if you're going to take money from them, which is their main goal, you're probably going to put yourself in a bad situation. They don't like that, and they're going to make sure that you don't do that again. Okay. So what about the ex-boyfriend? Why was he considered to be such a strong suspect?
He was considered one of the main suspects because of his abuse history with her. He had abused her for years, but she had kept going back to him because she had this vision that she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, have a husband, have a family, have all of her children with the same father, all that. So she kept going back to him. He kept abusing her. She was scared of him, but she wanted to stay with him. He was one of the main suspects because we thought he would be very jealous of anybody else that came in between them. As much as he abused her, he still had feelings for her, and when a new man came into the picture, he could have gotten jealous or protective of his family and came to approach her about it.
And another thing about him, kind of in this lifestyle, women are kind of seen as like you kind of owned them almost. So if she's going off and she's going to see other people, whether she's with him or not, he might see that as a threat. So it might have been like, I can have you or no one can kind of thing. And also noticeable is that she had a tattoo of his street name on her chest. Was not shot, but that could have just been a coincidence. We're not sure. There's nothing that proves that at this moment in time.
So talking a little bit about Jillian before she fell into this lifestyle, because one of the things that we talk about is that what happened to them shouldn't be the thing that you remember about them. It's who they were that we try to remember and get the story back out. So tell us a little bit about Jillian before all this.
She was a beautiful mother of 2 children. We talked to one of her friends, Lisa Miller, and Lisa told us how she was just so outgoing. All she cared about was her children. She didn't want to work full-time, but she wanted to do everything she could to provide for these 2 kids. Her mom, Jillian Miles, told us how she loved to be very independent and wanted to grow up. Once she moved out of the house, she just became so beautiful and so self-confident in herself, and unfortunately she did fall into this lifestyle. However, she still had her own personality and her own dreams that had been with her whole life.
Coming off of what Avery was saying, even though she did fall into this lifestyle, there were still signs that she was trying to get out of it. For example, she wrote a letter to Sinclair asking to get back into the college, to maybe try to get a degree, get a job. She might have figured out that this wasn't really working for her. There is still a part of her that really didn't want that and wanted to do better for herself and her kids.
And unfortunately, the situation sometimes holds people into that environment. So getting into the drugs and then the money, at times, if she's making pretty good money, it's hard to get out of that situation. There are people that do it, but it's a little bit difficult once you get in that. So tell us a little bit about what it was like to talk to her mother.
Our first call with her, we didn't really know what to expect because it hadn't really been a long time. Again, this case was in 2013, so like the emotions are obviously still raw to her because it was so recent. She was very loving, I would say, even to strangers who are asking her about her daughter who passed. She's very emotional, so she has a lot of emotion towards the case, and you can see that she really does care and she really does want to get this case solved.
One of the things that when I started this whole process of the class and things like that, talking to friends and family of the victims kind of made it surreal for me. It made it something that I didn't think I would get emotional about, and then found myself attached to it after that. How did going through this process affect you guys?
It was really heartbreaking to hear her say the things, especially when she would talk about the 2 children that were left behind. She is now in custody of the 2 children, and to hear her talk about them was just heartbreaking. Like Clara said, we went in not really knowing what to expect, but she really took us in and helped us with so many things, giving us all of her information and everything. But it was heartbreaking to hear her talk about her daughter that she lost and how it still affects her and how she just wants closure on this case.
And then she also did show up to our presentation, so seeing her there, she did get pretty emotional, so kind of seeing that, like, it got us all a little bit emotional because it really does just show you how real it is. Because I feel like you're like, oh, like you're just reading it on a piece of paper. At that point, it's just a paper until you go and talk to people about it, people who are involved, and then it becomes not just something on paper.
Very few of us can relate, but seeing that, we still can't relate, but we can feel sympathy and feel the emotions that she can't even imagine to what she feels.
So how do you think she felt about you guys looking into this case?
So when we first looked into the case, we found her contact and we sent her a message on Facebook, and probably not even an hour later she replied, and she was very grateful, and she was like, yes, I would be more than willing to call. I think she felt a bit of relief because I know from talking to her, she's been trying to get to focus on this case and trying to get like advancements in it. I think she's kind of gotten a little stuck there, so to see someone like reaching out to her, she kind of got a little bit of her hope back for that.
One thing about cases like this, especially being involved in that lifestyle, what problems do the police have when investigating something like this?
When we were researching the case and we were talking to Detective Chad Jones about like why the police might have encountered walls and stuff in the case and may not have been to proceed or get any information. If the police tried to talk to people maybe who knew about the case or things of the sort, people in this lifestyle are very like not willing to talk about it just because of the hierarchy in it. For example, we encountered people saying that they didn't know certain people just because they were scared of them. And so obviously when you have the police questioning you and you know something and you're scared of someone, you're obviously more than likely going to lie about it. And if you can't get anyone to say the truth and you don't have any eyewitnesses, it's very hard to say that a certain person did it.
There was also a lot of information about her that she kept private. For example, her drug dealing, she kept very private. It was hard to trace who she had been in contact with because that was obviously something that she kept very secret.
Big thing is a lot of times in those neighborhoods and environments and things like that, it's just difficult to get people to talk. Mm-hmm. Somebody out there knows something. Somebody has said something. Somebody knows what's going on. And if somebody has heard something and they're not afraid to come forward, who should they contact?
I would contact the Dayton Police Department, and then if you want to stay anonymous, there's also the Crime Stoppers line, and then we also have our email.
So you can get a hold of us. If you need to, you can contact us at coldcase@masonohioschools.com, and we'll pass on that information if you have anything. Tell us a little bit about what you were expecting when you came in this class.
So for me, my dad does teach the forensics class before you go into cold case because it's kind of like you have to take that before you take this class. So I've always kind of been like around this kind of stuff, so I already like knew what to expect. The only thing I didn't really expect, obviously, was the connection that we had with Dawn and the sympathy that we all felt, like the raw emotion of her losing a child.
Similar to Clara, I came into this class because of a friend recommendation. She told me how this was just a very cool class you don't understand the benefits you get until you've been through it. So many life lessons, and she thought it would be good for me to try it. So I came into the class and it became very real. It was not just solving a case, it was solving the murder of someone's daughter, and all the lessons on speaking to her and just how things work was super, super cool.
So if you were to recommend this to somebody else, what are some things you would tell about your experience?
I would suggest to maybe be prepared for the things that you might hear, just because you don't really think it's real, and like some of the information that you may not know is kind of like really like gut-wrenching. So kind of just like being able to make sure that you can kind of process that thing, and especially if someone who's like either related or a friend is telling you this, it's probably already hard for them to tell you that. So think about like what you might say, like your responses, because you say the wrong thing and it's not going to end up well. And just making sure you have those communication skills, or at least someone in your group has that communication skill. And you could say like a way with words, obviously, because if you say the wrong thing and someone's telling you that someone else got shot, that's not very, it's not going to go good.
In all of our cases, again, we are trying to get these stories back out. And Jillian was brutally murdered in her house in front of her kids, which to me is unimaginable. And if anybody out there knows anything about Jillian Miles' case, please come forward and give that information to someone. There's a family that's still grieving over this every day. After seeing her mother come in and cry right at the beginning of your presentation was tough to watch, but it's also good to know that we're there to try to help. So if anybody has any information, we really appreciate it if you would bring forward. And I want to thank you girls for the work you put into it. I think you did a great job, and hopefully down the road we'll get some answers. Thank you for listening to this episode of Cold Case MHS.
This podcast was edited by the students of Cold Case MHS and produced by Mr. Hubbard and myself. The music was performed and written by Alexa Dahl, and the artwork was created by the students of MHS Design Studio Internship.
Please consider sharing this podcast to bring more light to these victims. Tune in next time to Cold Case MHS, Monsters and Demons.
Photographs faded, memories grown old, a story entangled, a crime so unfaithful, yet left untold. I'm puzzled in the dark, we will find that spark, there you've left their mark. Victims in memory, let's find the enemy, we won't leave it be. Behind every shadow, a story to be told, of lives that were special, but some hearts have grown cold. In the depths of the darkness, a flicker